Let me invite Don Thoren to come to the lectern and share with us.
Johnson, 40 years I've been working with you. Never once have you failed to leave instructions about how I'm to do my job. Well, if you think he didn't leave written instructions, that's true, he didn't. But 5 or 6 times in the last 10 years, he's called me aside. He said, "Now I'm having you speak at my funeral. You remember what you're supposed to do, don't you?" I said, "Well, just in case, remind me." He said, "I want fun and laughter." And I'm thinking, okay, fun and laughter at a Methodist funeral, there's no challenge here. Well, I tell you, it's hard to know what to say and where to start. Something was confirmed for me this morning, Pastor. I knew Johnson was a character, but I didn't know it was scriptural that he was a character. Well, assembled here today are 3 groups of people about which Bill Johnson never finished talking about: his family, his church and those people that were part of his Sunday school program, and his buddies from the National Speakers Association. We're here today. Regarding the family, I was always curious about the way Marge, especially, and Bill talked about Jill and Jay and Julie. It appeared to me that these were the only 3 children born on earth that were not born with original sin. That these were 3 angels. And there were a couple of times I thought Jill had wings. You guys probably know it, but he never tired of bragging about you and how important you were. He's been a pillar of this church, obviously. Most of us heard more about this church than in many cases we felt we needed to know. He invited Kathleen and I to speak at a special program. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably in the room where we're going to have the reception today. And I spoke, and Kathleen spoke and sang, and Bill alerted us in advance. He says, "Don, I'm not sure how much money is in the budget, but rest assured I'll do the best I can." And we got lunch. And some of you have probably spoken for Bill for lunch, or maybe even less. Members of his Sunday school class. I don't know how many stories I heard about his Sunday school classes. Now, is there anybody else here today that was in his Sunday school class? Let me see your hands. Because obviously you're survivors. You survived the Crusades with Bill Johnson. So your belief must be strong and must be resolute. And then there's the speakers group. Bill loved to tell a story about how Cavett Robert came to him to save the National Speakers Association. He says, Bill, that's Bill's way of describing it, by the way. We need you. He said, we've got this association, we've got all these speakers that are involved and interested and motivated, but we haven't got anybody to put it together and to organize it. We'll pay you $400 a month, Bill. And of course, our national headquarters will have to be in a bedroom at your house. And by the way, it'd be also helpful if Marge and the kids managed the office. And those kids are old enough to fold stuff, mutilate, and mail our NSA promotional material. I'd say Bill took the job, but that wouldn't be true. The Johnson family took the job. And they basically, almost single-handedly, put the National Speakers Association on the map. Bill loved working with speakers. Many of us are here today that have had a special relationship with him. June Klein flew in from Atlanta to be here. And I love one of June's little comments. She says, "You know, I just love that old grouch. He was so sweet." And I'm thinking, grouch sweet. How many people do we know where those two go together? Well, not very many, but I guess that's what makes Bill a character. Well, whether critiquing, by the way, Pastor, you never indicated whether or not you asked for that critique. You told us you received one. And there's probably a lot of us in the room today that would say, "Don't know that I asked for it, but I sure got it." And in most cases, it was certainly helpful. People like Naomi Rohde, I think she's back there. I see Jim. Naomi, you back there? There she is. And Joel Weldon sitting up here. People who are some of the finest speakers in America today. Patricia Fripp, who flew in from San Francisco to be here. All credit Bill tremendously for the effect and the influence that he had on their lives. So whether critiquing or complimenting, he transformed a young fledgling industry with sheer force of will, coupled with this incredible visionary Cavett Robert. The two of them were just an inseparable team that worked together like a well-oiled machine to bring a floundering little group into national prominence. Where you spoke 6 or 7 years ago, that was down at the Phoenix Country Club, was it? And that was a night that Joel Weldon and Judy, thought to themselves, you know, Bill has done so much for so many people, we ought to recognize him while he's still healthy enough to enjoy it. And several hundred people came to the country club that night. And we celebrated a testimony to his life. I'd forgotten that you were there, Pastor, but after watching you today, let me tell you, brother, you're improving. As a matter of fact, I think there's some of us that would like you to know that the speaking field's pretty crowded right now. Marvelous job. Thank you so much. Thank you that your testimony today is a living testimony to Bill and the influence that he had on so many. Well, May 17th, 2014. I heard Bill give his last speech. I wasn't intending to be there. It's kind of accidental that I showed up. Bill was on the program to give out some 40th anniversary books of the National Speakers Association, books that he had helped create the architecture for and gather information for. And he wanted all of these speakers in the room to understand the magnificence of the National Speakers Association and to see this book. So Donna Newman, she's the future coming Naomi Rohde, was the MC. Now Bill had edged himself up along the side because he was walking a little slow. He wanted to get up close. He also wanted to make sure Donna got his introduction right, I assume. And as she introduced him, he laid the cane aside and did his best to energetically approach the platform. And he had that wry Johnson smile on his face as he's looking out at us. I think he was probably thinking, did you realize how wonderful I still am? He reached for the microphone and just cradled it in loving hands. Bill Johnson in his element. And then, as predicted, he began to speak and went overtime. Poor Donna is up here giving him motions, and he's protesting the entire time that he's moving off of the platform. But I needed more time. And he did. And he always needed more time. Well, that afternoon, Bill was stricken. But think of this. The guy gave his last speech on his last day. How good is that? How do you beat that? Joel and I were sitting together talking, and Joel said, well, I wonder which one will be the last of us standing. I said, well, only the Lord knows that. Joel, being a Christian Scientist, said, well, Don, the Lord has told me. Would you like to know? Classic Johnson. Romans 5 that was read today. Jesus came to save us while we were still sinners. Enemies of God. People living by their own free will without regard to our Creator. But Jesus loved us anyway. Came to us to save us anyway. Bill was not one who talked a lot about his religion, but he was one who went where the people were, and he never failed to be a representative of his Lord and Savior. Well, we're going to miss Bill. Indeed we are. But I'm sure he's been busy. You know, he had to get through customs at the pearly gate last week. And I'm sure he had more baggage than was allowed for the flight. Like most Christians, I think the first people he needed to find were Jesus, Peter, and Paul. Because, you know, they left us with some questions we just haven't been able to answer down here. And my guess is that's where he first went for answers. Then I think I could safely predict the next person he started looking for was Cavett. And I'm sure his first question was, Cavett, when's the next meeting of the Heavenly NSA chapter? Cavett very likely would say, well, Bill, I've been talking about it to everybody. We haven't got any organization yet. Bill would say, Cavett, it's like I told you back in Phoenix years ago. You got to have somebody wrangle those speakers. You got to have somebody get them organized. Now tell me, where is there a meeting room, and where can I find some good sound assistants? We got to get this thing going. And my guess is either today or next Saturday, there may very well be the first meeting of, I guess it'll be NSA-Heaven. I guess that's the way we designate ourselves now. Most of us remember Bill for his fun. His fun and his adjectives. Did you notice Bill never used adjectives, he only used superlatives. It wasn't wonderful, it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen. It wasn't a speaker that was wonderful. He'd say, and they blew me away. Everything in superlatives. Loved to tell jokes. Bill and I both loved jokes. They weren't always jokes you'd tell in church. He and I both had prostate problems come and haunt our lives. And we'd kind of share the latest medical insight about our malady. And Bill said to me one day, he said, "Thoren, you got to know when guys are getting really pretty old. When they get together to compare the size of their enlarged prostates. We're in a category all our own at this point." And he laughed. Jay talks about having a special relationship with his dad. And we knew he did. Jay talked about taking a vacation in Chicago. That was one of the cities he mentioned. Well, Jay, that was the year I was national president. And we were glad you were there. And once you got old enough to retire, some of the rest of us had to go to work to help Bill because he didn't have you to order around anymore. And he had to have somebody. Bill received a lot of awards from NSA. And it seemed like, for whatever reason, I was most often the guy giving them the award. And I, of course, would try to keep his ego in check with some of the things I would say about him. And he'd frequently ask me to retell the story I told, the little joke I told, when I presented him with the NSA Chapter Lifetime Member Award. So I would retell it. I'd say, well, the board of directors have looked throughout all the membership, and they've determined that one individual who's made the biggest significant contribution in a lifetime to this profession. And the board voted and decided that they wanted to give it to Bill Johnson, but before they did, they came to some of us older speakers, and they wanted to know our opinion. We got together, talked about it, and we voted him in 7-5. Now, the other thing we laughed about with that old joke is we could never begin to figure out where we'd heard it first. We think maybe it was Bill Go. Well, Bill, brother, I hope I've met your expectation for a little fun and laughter. Knowing Bill Johnson has been a fun experience. And I think I speak for many of us here today when we say, Bill, looking forward to seeing you again, brother. Thank you.